So when we're balancing a chemical equation, generally there are 4 steps that you must follow. The first step is identifying each and every component of the chemical equation. The second step is by listing down every element that is involved in that chemical equation. The third step is to begin balancing by picking an element to start with and balancing that first, and moving on to the next element and the next and the next until we cover all the elements and we balance them all. So we just balanced it. And the fourth step is precautionary, that we have to recheck the equation once we're done, just to make sure that everything is balanced and there was no careless mistakes along the way. So let's go and explore the first step of this process. So the first step of balancing a chemical equation is identifying the components. Now, in a chemical equation, there are 2 parts of the chemical equation. We have the left side, known as the material side, where we have the materials for the reaction, and on the right side we have the products. So let's give an example. If you are faced with a problem, like an exam question that's asks you to write a chemical equation, what happens when you mix lithium in water? So let us list down the materials involved, that is, the substances before the reaction occurs. So of course I said we need what happens when we add lithium into water. So the materials are lithium and water, just like that, and we have the materials. And then what is produced from this reaction? Now this you must already know. You have to memorize it. It's standard and it cannot be manipulated. So when we add the group 1 elements like lithium, sodium, potassium into water, we will get the hydroxide of that metal and hydrogen gas. So when we add lithium into water, we will get lithium hydroxide and hydrogen gas. So we have listed down all the components, the materials and the products, but we haven't balanced them yet. Alright, okay, so let's move on to the next step. The next step is to list down every element that's involved in this reaction. So this is the easy part. It's not the hard part yet. So we just list down whatever element it's here. So we can see lithium, we can see hydrogen, we can see oxygen. These 3 elements are involved in this reaction. So once we're done listing them down, let's write them down on both sides to make it easy. Now let's move on to the third step. So the third step is we begin balancing the elements. So let's observe this chemical equation right here. Now the goal of balancing chemical equations is to make sure that the number of atoms of each element here is equal on the left side, on the material side, and on the right side where we have the products. So obviously we need to pick a place where we can start. We need to choose which element to start balancing first, because we need to do it one at a time. We cannot do it simultaneously. Unless you're already a professional, we can balance it immediately, but this is we are assuming that all of us here are beginners, so we'll do it one at a time. So how do we choose which element to start with? Well, the bottom line is you can actually choose either one to start with. It could be lithium first, we can focus on balancing the lithium, or we could start with hydrogen, or we could start with oxygen. Because if you did the balancing process properly, all three paths or methods would lead to the same correct answer if we did properly. But however, if you have practiced a lot in chemistry in balancing chemical equations, you would learn that some elements have certain priorities over others, meaning that if we chose lithium, and we chose to do lithium first, and we balance that first, and then we move on to the next, it would make our job easier. So this depends on your preference entirely, but some ways, some methods, if we start with oxygen, for example, it might get complicated, but we'll just try starting with lithium first. Like I said, anyway, will lead to the same correct answer. So let's start with lithium. So let's count how many lithium atoms we have on the left and on the right. So on the left side we have 1 here, and on the right side we also have 1. So it looks as if that lithium is already balanced. So let's just move on. Lithium is done. Let's go to the next element, is hydrogen. So for hydrogen, on the left side we have 2 here, 2 hydrogen, and on the right side we have 1 here and 2 here, so that's a total of 3 hydrogens. So just write that down. We have 2 on the left side and 3 on the right side. Okay, so hydrogen is not balanced. Let's balance hydrogen first before moving on to oxygen. So let's see here. Okay, so when we're trying to balance the equation, it's kind of like trial and error. We need to experiment with different numbers to get the right combination. So now we have 2 on the left side and 3 on the right side. Both of these numbers do not relate. I mean, if we wanted to multiply something with 2, we would not get 3. If you wanted to get 3 from 2, there is no round number that we could multiply with 2. So how do we do this? So we need to find a way to make the number of hydrogen atoms on the right side an even number, or a number that we could get to from 2. So let's try putting a 2 here, just experimenting. So make sure you write this using a pencil or something that you could easily erase with, because we're going to be updating this along the way. We might need to update it. So let's just put a 2 here. So when we put a 2 here, the number of hydrogen atoms over here becomes 2, and 2 here. So 2 plus 2 becomes 4. So now what we did is just we made it 4 hydrogen atoms on the right side. And so now it's much more simpler to go, what do we need to multiply by 2 to get 4? It's easy, just multiply it by 2. So just put in a 2 here. So now we've just balanced hydrogen. We've got 4 atoms on the left and on the right. Let's move on to oxygen. So for oxygen, let's count it on the left and right. So on the left we've got 2 times 1 is 2 oxygen atoms on the left, and on the right we've got 2 times 1, that's 2. Okay, so 2 on the right, so oxygen is balanced. And then we go to the final step, which is recheck the equation. Let's look at lithium again. On the left side we have 1, and on the right side we suddenly have 2, because 2 times 1 is 2. So what we did along the way is we accidentally unbalanced the lithium. So on the right side, on the left side we have 1, and on the right side we have 2. So how do we balance that? We just multiply the left by 2, and just like that we've already got it. So 2 on the left and 2 on the right. So just like that, we have balanced our first chemical equation. Let's rewrite that in a more clear way. 2 lithium, 2 water, we would get is that right? Yep. Okay. So we have successfully balanced this chemical equation. Let's give another example. What happens when we burn ethane in oxygen? So ethane is a hydrocarbon, and when we burn it, it means that we are adding oxygen. It reacts with oxygen in the air, and as always, it would create carbon dioxide and water. So we just finished our first step, which is identifying the components of the reaction. These on the left side are the materials, and on the right side we have the products. Let's move on to the second step, listing down the elements. So on the left we have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Alright, third step, let's start balancing it. So on the left side we have 2 carbons, and on the right side we have 1 carbon. How do we balance it? 1 times 2, that's it. So just put in the 2 here. So automatically we would balance out the carbon, just like that. Alright, move on to the next, hydrogen. How many hydrogens are on the left? We've got 6. On the right we have 2 here. So 6 and 2. How do we balance that? We multiply the 2 by 3, and then we get 6. Right? So we put in a 3 here, and then we balanced out the hydrogen. Let's move on to the oxygen. We've got 2 on the left. 2 multiplied by 2 here, we get 4. And then over here we have 3 multiplied by 1, we got 3. So 4 plus 3 is 7 oxygen. On the left we have 2, on the right we have 7. So this is where it gets tricky. How do we balance the oxygen when it cannot be achieved by multiplying each other? Like 2 times what, we would get 7. So this is where we use fractions, because there's no other way. We have balanced out every other element except for oxygen, and we have come to a checkmate. But we can use, in chemistry we are allowed to use fractions in chemical equations. So just use a fraction, 7 instead of alright, so 7, we move it here, it becomes 7 over 2. So that is our multiplier. We just put in a 7 over 2 here. So let's make sure whether it's balanced. So on the left side we have 7 over 2 multiplied by 2 equals 7. On the right side we have 2 multiplied by 2 plus with 3 multiplied by 1. That's 4 plus 3, that's 7. So on the left side and on the right side we have 7 oxygen atoms. So we have successfully balanced out all 3 elements with a fraction here. So let's rewrite that. Let me just check one last time if everything's okay. Okay, carbon check, hydrogen check, oxygen check. Alright, so this is a balanced equation, and yeah, that's how you balance a chemical equation.